Shemai, croeso, welcome to my writing vlog. This is vlog number 2. I am currently waiting for my son to finish in his swimming lesson, so I thought I may as well record this in the car while waiting, why not? Last night I had a bit of an epiphany over my middle scene. That midpoint of your story where your protagonist goes from being reactive to her story goal. Now, the story goal in a romance is always to do with falling in love, gaining their happy ever after, something along those lines. So for her to go from being reactive to being proactive. So it is an important scene. It has to be done from the protagonist's point of view. So for me, it had to be done from Lauren's point of view because it is her story goal. So, what happens in it is that they've walked at the top of the mountain for her to see the rest of the town, which is called Cwm Myrddin. He tells her the story of where the name of the town comes from, because Cwm means valley and Myrddin is Welsh for Merlin. So he tells her the tale of how Nimue and Myrddin, how Merlin ended up in the area. And the story leads to a really cute story and how it leads to where daffodils come from, to do with Cennin Pedair, Peter being the son of Nimue and Myrddin. It's very loosely based on the mythology of King Arthur and Merlin. So it's a really sweet scene. And then there's another bit then where they end up at this place, Leek Farm, which is where it actually happened with Nimue and Myrddin. And there are rocks in the walls and the stones that have been engraved through all the generations of Bryn's family. So whenever they've fallen in love with someone and married them or whatever, they've carved their initials together in each stone. So it's a really cute way of showing how love is eternal and how it, can be kept, how it can be nurtured. And Lauren sees it as love that can be weathered, that can fall apart, because she does have a big conflict in her life over trusting promises from people and how they let her down and things. So both of them have different opinions on it. But the scene then, leading up to all of this, there's been quite a long, slow burn up until this point. They've had their first kiss. They've kind of denied the fact that they had it because it was a really bad idea. And they are fighting this attraction, though. They are drawn to each other, and it's building up, and you can tell that something's going to happen between them. So in this scene, Lauren feels like she needs to do something about it. She proposes to Bryn that they have an agreement to have a no strings attached relationship, so that she can get some stress relief from everything that's going on in her life. Without any ties. So at 8 weeks, cut ties, she goes back to the city, he stays where he is, and he gets the ability to spend 8 weeks getting over his ex-wife, so that when Miss Right comes along, he's ready. So she sells it to him as like a win-win type of thing. It doesn't take much selling. I mean, he wants her. But he is in conflict. He is really hesitant about it because his wife left him alone, heartbroken, because she didn't want to live in the country. He feels like he trapped her in a life that she never wanted. And when she said she wanted to leave for the city, he refused to go because his life, his family, his generational farm is all there in Cwm Myrddin, and he couldn't leave it. So he feels really conflicted to get involved with someone who's going to leave in 8 weeks' time. He doesn't want to get his heart broken again. But as they get closer, when they're on the top of this mountain, it gets harder to fight the attraction between them. And it builds as the scene builds. And at the end, his resolve snaps. And they come together. But what I realised what my epiphany was, is that scene is building up to that moment, that proactive moment of that step they take. It's not actually taking the step itself. So my midpoint's in the wrong place, which doesn't matter in the grand scale of things. When a reader reads your story, they don't think to themselves, oh, this writer put their midpoint in the wrong place. You know, you don't label your scenes and tell them which type of scene you put where. What matters is the lead up to it. That's what matters. And because it was in Lauren's point of view, I didn't feel that it built up to it well enough. So, for example, knowing now that the midpoint's in the wrong place, because the next scene is the sex scene, it doesn't have to be a sex scene in the middle at all, it just happens to be. And they agree to this no strings attached relationship, both of them agree to it. That's taking the proactive step towards their story goal. It's a false victory, don't get me wrong. They think that it's going to solve this problem, that he's going to have his rebound and he'll be ready to move on, and that she'll be able to cut ties at the end of it all, and it'll all be a clean cut and they'll all go away happy. Whereas obviously that's not going to be happening. You know, the reader knows that they haven't learnt their lessons yet, that both Bryn and Lauren still have to fix themselves before they can actually get their happy ever after. And they have to recognise their feelings for each other. So, with that in mind, that midpoint, the new midpoint, in the scene where they take that step, means that the scene before now, I can make in Bryn's point of view. And in doing that, because he's the most hesitant, she's the one who suggested, and he's the most hesitant, to be able to show from his point of view that snap where he can't fight it anymore, where he has to give in to that physical need that he has when he's around her. That is going to lead really nicely into the midpoint. Bryn's hands stayed where they were, tight at his sides, even as his body betrayed him. His fingers itched to move, to touch, to claim, but he kept them still. Lauren's breath brushed against his jaw, warm, teasing, too close. He should step back, just one step, and this madness would stop. He didn't. His chest rose and fell, slow and deliberate, like he could force control back into his limbs as he just breathed deep enough. She wasn't moving either. Not away, not forward, just standing there, watching him with those sharp, knowing eyes. His jaw flexed. This was a mistake. A bloody catastrophe waiting to happen. He knew how this ended. And yet, his fingers twitched at his sides just once. She tipped her head, her voice barely above a whisper. Strictly business. Bryn exhaled sharply through his nose, a muscle in his jaw ticking. Christ! She thought this was logic, a deal, like it was as simple as that. It wasn't. Nothing about her was simple. She shifted, just slightly, and her thigh brushed against his. The contact was feather-light, innocent almost, but it burned straight through him anyway. He forced himself to still. She was playing a dangerous game, but so was he. His chest rose on another deep inhale. He needed to say something, anything. Tell her no. Tell her she was out of her mind. Tell her to leave before he did something he couldn't take back. Instead, his voice came out hoarse, betraying him. Lauren. Her gaze snapped to his, the air between them thickened, charged, waiting. I can go hard just hearing your name, he admitted, voice rough, unwilling, like the confession had been ripped from him. His hands finally moved, catching her hips before he could stop himself. Her breath hitched, her fingers tightening around his arms like she felt the shift, the moment his resistance cracked. But it wasn't gone. Not yet. Bryn's grip on her was firm, but his thumbs barely moved, just the tiniest stroke, just enough to drive himself mad. Her body melted against his, but still, he fought it. One more second, he'd pull away in just one more second. Then she tipped her chin up, her breath brushing his lips, and he knew he was lost. His body had already decided, his mind was just catching up. Tell me to stop, he rasped, giving her the last chance, one final lifeline, the only thing keeping him from tumbling over the edge. Her pupils blew wide as she traced a finger down his arm. His grip tightened for half a second like he might pull her closer. Instead, his hands twitched and he forced himself to let go. Nearly, one step back, one word, that's all it would take. Then she whispered, "Don't stop." Bryn's hands stayed where they were, tight at his sides, even as his body betrayed him. His fingers itched to move, to touch, to... Bryn sucked in a breath, his pulse hammering so hard he felt it everywhere as his last shred of control snapped. I must apologise for the disjointed ending. I did record it all yesterday, but there was a problem with one of the videos processing and I've had to re-record it today. The joys of technology. I hope you enjoyed that little teaser. If you can let me know in the comments anything that you're doing with your middles of your novels, anything that you've ever found out, any epiphanies that you've had, or if you're a reader, do you notice when that shift happens in the middle? Is there anything in particular that you notice? Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe if you like what you're seeing, and I shall catch you next time. Au revoir!